Yes, you are now listening to the sound.
We back.
Sports Reports is ordered. Back in the building.
We back.
I'm focused.
He only 16.
You know what I'm saying? The one and only. Born in Texas, raised in VA, representing everything New Jerusalem. He tried to tell you, Tobin Anderson, he tried to tell you there was no reason to leave FDU if you were just going to go to New Rochelle. How did that work out for you? Don't leave. Don't bring feelings to a fact-fight.
Don't do it.
And it's I, the unorthodox statistician, going left so much and thought I was southpaw. Rest in peace, George Foreman. I do believe in Joe Hendry. I am 2-5. Tonight, we're going to talk about the madness. We're going to go around the association, and then we're going to sit here and pontificate on what the hell are the New York Giants doing. Still trying to figure it out. But hey, like, review, subscribe, share, rate, do all the free things. Do all the good things, and while you're doing the good things, you might as well have you a liquid death in hand. Mr. Logical.
Drink it out of your sluice of excuses mug.
Only the Cleveland Cavaliers can go on a 15-game win streak and then follow it up with a 4-game losing streak.
It's remember when Houston won like 23 games back in a row? I mean, back in the day with T-Mac and I believe Yao.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't believe they made it out of the first round. I don't think T-Mac made it out of the first round.
Yeah, I think they lost to the Mavs that year.
Yeah, so I kind of feel like Cleveland is a bit like that. I think they play good, smart basketball. I think they have talent on their team. But we talk about this all the time. When the first round of the NBA playoffs used to be a best of 5, you can kind of overwhelm a team for a couple of games, and now you're up 2-0, and you just got to win one of the next 3. The thing with a team like Cleveland, I think they have deficiencies in their matchups that can be exploited by a smart coach.
So like, not Tibbs.
Tibbs is going I don't know if Tibbs just doesn't hear what we say and what we have seen for the last, we'll call it what? Derrick Rose MVP was 2011? 2011. So, we got 15 years of this, of you overcoaching and overplaying your players. Like, yo, the owner's paying for like 15 spots. Use 11 of them. One guy can just be doing cardio for 4-minute clips at a time. Give him 12 minutes. Just like, yo, dog, you don't shoot. All you do is play defense and try to grab rebounds. You don't play any pick and rolls. All you do is you run up and down the floor, and whoever's closest to the rim, you defend that person because no team plays through the big man anyway. So I'm going to give Josh Hart 12 minutes off this game. You got to get 3 minutes per quarter so he can get breathers. That's it. But like I said, I feel with Cleveland, I think they're a well-coached team. I just feel like there's going to be mismatches that you can exploit. I mean, I know this was a major scale and it was something they talked about a lot, but the way Boston targeted Luka, I think Phoenix did a few years back, very similar to the way where teams where Milwaukee was the favorite in the series, and they just kind of realized like, hey, I think we have the bodies that are athletic enough and strong enough to wall off Giannis. You don't really know that until you see it in action. Right. Like, you don't know right now, like if you are a team like Detroit, you think you have a good team, but if you get in a series with Cleveland, however it matches up, like all the standings and everything have to move around. But if you got Cleveland versus Detroit, yeah, Cleveland's going to have more regular season wins. But what if Detroit figures out in game 1, hey, man, they can't handle the Thompson-Cunningham pick and roll when they go to their second unit or something like that. Like, we can eat off of this.
I'm glad you said that.
And once they, as a team of good coaches, to have realized, like, oh, you can't guard this play.
I'm
because you
glad
don't
you
have the
said that because that's
size.
my problem with Cleveland is that Donovan Mitchell, and of course, when we talk about height, we exaggerate a little bit. We add a little
Yeah,
flavor just to make it sound good. They got Donovan Mitchell listed at 6'3". They got Darius
I
Garland
heard him
listed at
say.
6'1".
I heard a pundit say something along the lines that he was, you got a 6'4" guard, Donovan Mitchell. I was like, I didn't know. I thought he was always listed at 6'2".
He ain't no 6'4", and I don't think Jamal Murray's 6'4" for that matter either. But
No,
but when I look at it, what's the difference between these two guys and Dame Lillard and CJ? I'll tell you the difference. The difference is they're roughly the same size, but Dame and CJ could shoot. They could shoot the lights out. Now Donovan Mitchell can get streaky. He can get on that
streaky.
J.R.
He gets
Smith
hot.
type
Yeah,
moment
he
for a
dropped
game.
70 like
Yeah.
for Cleveland. Yeah,
And
so we
I'm
know he can
still waiting for
score.
Darius Garland to show up in a playoff game. That's first and foremost. But speaking of which, let me sidebar for a quick second.
Correct.
Because right before we came on, I saw that Dame Lillard is out indefinitely with a blood clot now.
That just happened tonight.
Yeah, that just happened like literally probably when we first started our
How these
pre-show.
guys is finding blood clots? They've been flying
but
like
I just forgot
I heard
about it.
that adversely affects you when you fly because they fly so much. You would think that
But his is in the calf.
maybe
His is in his calf, not like so. Wemby has what Brandon Ingram had, little bit different than what Bosch had, but Dame's is in his right calf. But back to the Cavs though, like I just don't believe in them, because what up, Residente? Thank you, sir.
appreciate it.
Pursuit of Forever every other Wednesday, 6:30 Eastern. All that.
Real relationship content.
Yes, sir.
No selfie cameras
And
in the
fellas,
drive-through
probably
at Popeyes.
yeah, and tell your girl you
Nonsense.
love her, man. Just tell her every so often. You know what I'm saying? But yeah, so Dame Lillard's out indefinitely. No timetable for his return. I'm thinking that they're probably going to shut him down. But going back to Cleveland, I do like the DeAndre Hunter pickup in the trade at the trade deadline. That's an upgrade over Ike Okoro, who should never ever shoot a basketball. Even though Evan Mobley may win Defensive Player of the Year, Mr. Logical feels like he's going to have that Gobert impact.
You'll get that Gobert.
You know,
because once again, Rudy Gobert has been Defensive Player of the Year 3-4 times, and every single year that he wins that award, the matchup and a coach, and it's not. I don't think it's an indictment on Rudy Gobert. I think he does his job well. But if I have to play you, potentially most of these series, if you look at the standings, yeah, Cleveland and Boston seem to have a big, lead on the East. But from 3 to 6, it's 41 or 44, 42, 40, 41 wins. Boston, or no, New York, Indiana, Milwaukee, Detroit. All of them look like the same kind of team. It's not like, hey, New York has 44 wins and Detroit's barely getting a 41. They look like quality basketball teams. So you're going to get potentially 6 to 7 games.
Yeah, I don't think the Knicks want to see the Pistons, to be honest with you.
But I think every series is going to go 6 second round. The second round series. I think the first rounds might be quick, but I think the middle pack, that 3-6 game, the 4-5 series, those are 6 or 7 games, and then the subsequent rounds, I think.
Well, now with Dame out, I gotta think that Detroit has a chance to get into that 5 slot matchup with Indiana.
But I think they're still gonna need time. Like even if they jump Milwaukee, they're still gonna end up in a 6-game, 7-game series with Indiana.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? So I think a good coach can exploit, like, hey, like I said, just something as simple as like, this guy doesn't rotate well to the corner, or this second unit, we can exploit this guy to the point where if your coach is like, yo, all right, if you're Milwaukee, I want to play Kuzma this many minutes, but they know you have a team like Indiana, they're attacking him in this and he's getting quick fouls. Cat with New York getting a quick foul. Now you got to adjust your whole game plan. That could cost you a game. A guy get 2 fouls. You get a guy like Cleveland. Darius Garland gets 2 fouls in the regular game against the Wizards in April. It is what it is. You win or lose that game, you press on. that one, say you get, just hypothetically, the Heat make a little buzz in the tournament. Now you gotta play the Heat. The Heat are generally a sound team. They just right now they lack a playmaker. But now you get that 1-8 matchup, and the game is tougher than it needs to be. Now you win that game 107, 101 at home. It doesn't look good. Now people start to tighten up. You're not flowing. That seventh guy off the bench, normally in a game against Orlando in March, he's letting that three fly. But now he's like, nah, let me
Now he's
swing it
second
back.
guessing himself.
Second guess. Now I'm swinging it back. I'm swinging it back. Now that's at home. Now he's on the road. So like a couple of games like that, and you could be out of it.
Well, another thing I wanted to bring up, while we're here is, luckily, saying Jayson Tatum only had a ankle sprain, because I was thinking Kawhi Leonard when I saw that play last night. I was thinking worst case scenario, he's going to miss the playoffs or something along those lines, but it sounds like it's just an ankle sprain. So sit him out the rest of the season. Get them ready for game one of whoever you're going to play in the first round, whether that's Atlanta, Chicago, Orlando, or somebody else that you should sweep.
Correct.
You know what I mean?
They'll still go 5. It'll still go 5.
Knowing Boston.
It'll still go 5 no
Speaking
matter
of
who it
Jayson
is.
Tatum, speaking of Jayson Tatum, here's one for you, Mr. Logical.
Let's hear it.
There are 2 teenagers in NBA history to have had 100 threes, 50 steals, and 30 blocks in a season. 2 of them, those 2 are Ant and Jayson Tatum. Do you know who the third one is going to be soon?
Cooper Flag.
No, it's actually a rookie playing right now. Zachary Ricochet, who everyone forgot about. The number 1 overall draft pick in this NBA draft. He's got a couple of 30-point games. And
that's his fault that people forgot about him.
No, it's the league's fault. They should have put him in LA and we'd talk about him all the time.
No, if he should put up LA quality points. He should put up TV quality entertainment, and then we won't forget about you. Like we didn't forget about Zion, and he missed 900 games the last 3 years.
We're about to see, saying the Hawks going to be in the play-in, so we'll see how that goes. He'll get some playoff, experience in some ways, I guess, and we'll go from there. But you know what else? Right. Speaking of the East, one of these play-in teams here play-in teams put up 146 against the Lakers.
Yo, I love these. I love defensive stats in the NBA. I love when people talk about, oh, they're like the number 1 defense. It's like, I wish it was accounted for missed shots versus contested shots. Because sometimes a guy will just miss a good look, but they don't rank your defense off of that. Like if you're the number 1 ranked defense, it's not like,
it's based off of points per game.
It's based off points per game and stuff like that. And sometimes it's based off how you're playing offensively. So if you're in a back and forth battle, like I said, we talk about confidence all the time with these role players. The stars, when Mitchell, Garland, Kyrie, AD, Giannis, Dame, LeBron, Brunson, Jimmy Butler when he was the man stuff, certain guys can walk to the gym, walk to the scorer's table and say, hey, man, put me down for 25, 5, and 5. I'm hitting that. Just don't even worry about counting up my points. I'm getting you 25, 5, and 5. Or I'm getting you 23, 6, and 6. I'm getting you something like that every single time. A lot of these role players don't get that. So when the Lakers role players, when they're not hitting, because they have Luke and LeBron, it's like they can't just keep firing. They got to now work through those 2 guys. And sometimes it gets slow. And the other team is like, yo, we hot, we young, we're fast, we're running. Coach Carter style. And we just going to just keep running. And while you guys are frustrated because your offenses, which is very intricate, very detailed, very space-oriented, pick here, back screen here, position here, look here, check this, triangle this, floppy on this side, 50 on this side, all these things that JJ Redick and the brainchild and LeBron come up with. Some of these other guys like, listen, man, get this rebound and run. Just get the
Right.
rebound and run because these other guys aren't scoring offensively. They lose engagement defensively. Now we can get an easy run out. Now it's timeout, some shuffling the lineup. That's what happens when you are a team that just kind of relies on everything going right on one end and not having a fail safe in the back end because there's no size on the Lakers at all.
We got you next year, Riz. Yeah. So I think that when you look at it, it's kind of hard to quantify, unless you're literally just sitting there watching every single game, because you got people like Wimby, you have people like Dirk Lively that challenge shots, but then you have guys like SGA, J Dub, who are good perimeter defenders. So I guess it depends in a lot of ways. It depends on what you value more. So in today's NBA, while you love your shot blockers, it might help to have a Marcus Smart on your team with the amount of 3-pointers that people are shooting nowadays. So when you look at OKC, they're just a collection of defenders. A lot of people focus
Yeah.
on Shea because he's the leading scorer in the league, but he's
Yeah.
also probably a top, I would just say top 15, just to be on the safe side, top 15 type defender too, when you look at certain stats. But speaking of the West, Mr. Logical, the West is wild, man. Houston's back at the 2 seed, 9-1 in their last 10. Jokic has been out. The Nuggets this year, 4-7 without him. They're falling down. The Lakers, as I mentioned, the Bulls, Buzelis put up 31 on them in that 31-point victory.
That behind the back baseline move he put on Luca. And I don't think he would have gotten anybody with that. I don't think it was a Luca thing. I think it just was a perfectly timed. And once again, young legs, young body, aggressively attacking the rim. There's no presence. And I think
And I
that's why
hate the
some of
way
these
people talk about the NBA because, like last year, there were stats, and of course, stats don't always tell the whole story, but there were stats that showed that Luka was a top 2 or 3 post defender in the league last year. So
correct.
Luka made a defensive play the other night, and they're talking about we're seeing Luka play defense in a way that he hasn't played defense in his career. It's like, bro, he was just top 2 or 3 in post defense last year,
Yeah, but that's
but
a lot of that's
he wasn't in
because the
LA.
guy the guy guarding him is a guy that doesn't get the ball a lot. So he guards that guy, and that guy gets the ball in the post, and he doesn't have a
You talking
green
about
light.
Luka, or are you talking about Kobe Garden, Bruce Bowen?
Very similar.
Okay.
Very like trying to guard Shane Battier in a post. Like Shane Battier in the corner three, yeah. But like if you they're not running back cuts and screens for Battier by the rim. So that's how these numbers get inflated. I just look at excuse me, the presence of defensive bodies. I think OKC having young athletes on the perimeter, and then at a minimum, Hartenstein is just a big body, and then Chet Holmgren is 7'2" and he's willing to contest. The problem is if he gets bumped, he's so light, it could cost him some time. Like I think his hip injury came from him trying to defend somebody shot at the rim. They bumped, bad angle, and he fell straight down on his hip. So that I think that's the problem that kind of comes along with his defense. But like if he can defend without the contact and he can just use his length and his size and his presence, then you're good to go. I think that's something that Gobert does great in the regular season. But what happens is teams start to do things like pull him away from the basket, like that switch we saw in the Luca last year. Made no sense. I'm
Right.
putting Ant on Luca and I'm riding down with my best guy on their best guy.
Yeah. So looking at this, obviously OKC is number 1. So we got 2 through 10 here in the West. So walking through this real quick, we don't got to get like all the way into the weeds and all this, but
Yeah.
looking at 2 through 6, is this the order that they finish in?
We're looking at 72 games, 71, 71, 73, 72. Uh, I mean, the Clippers look like they're playing well. I believe the Grizzlies and the Lakers depends on how long Jokic is out. I think
They
that
said
could
that he
shift.
should be back during this current 5-game homestand that Denver has going on.
Okay, so they have the games at home. Being 4-6 in their last 10 is probably not good. Um, I say there's still. I think there's still movement, and I think there's going to be like concessions made. For instance, if you're the Nuggets and you're sitting at 3, are you comfortable taking the Warriors on, or do you want to get to 2 and maybe the Kings sneak up, or do you want to avoid the Timberwolves because they sent you home last year, or do you want them?
Hey, but
So
they
it's
don't got Cat this year.
so I mean maybe Nas Reed is that guy. He has to prove it in the playoffs. Maybe Julius Randle can. I don't know, like I don't know his injury history and if he's good through the playoffs. But I think it's going to be a lot of jockeying. Does insert player's name calf need to be rested for 2 or 3 games? Does this guy's hamstring need to be rested for the final 2 games? Do we need to get 2 more games and then maybe get back for our last 5 games before we bring a guy back? So I think a lot of those questions are going to play out. If you're 1, 2, 3, or 4, I mean, it's so even that I think you look at rest and not even worry about who your opponent is. If
So
if I'm a Western Conference team right now, I'm looking at like, you know what?
what it do, Lethal? So
Going on.
I think that the Rockets stay put. I think we see some jostling between the Lakers and Nuggets. I think that the Grizzlies are going to drop. I think the Grizzlies are going to be in danger of falling to the play-in. Ja's been in and out the lineup. They just don't look good. And their calling card isn't even working out for them, which is their defense. Golden State, I think, rises as long as Steph comes back sometime soon.
But
He's
that's
got
what
the
I mean. Like, do you just make the decision to say, you know what?
you can't. They're too
We're
close to the play-in.
They're close. Yeah, too close.
Yeah, I don't think you want to play in the play-in. So I think that the Warriors have to try to get. I think the Warriors end up at 5, and they supplant or surmount
So
Memphis.
you got the Grizzlies potentially dropping to 7 in the next. They have they're at 71, 11 games left.
I think it's potential there because looking at this, you know what I mean. It's a stretch just because they're 3 up on the Clippers and T Wolves, but the Clippers and T Wolves have been playing very well lately, especially the Clippers. They got the defense clicking. Julius Randle somehow is remembering how to play basketball when we thought that he lost, or I thought he lost all that.
Yeah,
So Minnesota looks pretty good. I think Sacramento and Phoenix are pretty much stuck where they are, and Phoenix is still trying to keep Dallas off because Anthony Davis is back now. He came back last night. I agree, Lethal. The Wolves are the sleeper here because they're the team out of this list that we're talking about that has the player that could go off for 35. You know what I mean? Because like when I look at the Clippers, Kawhi can score a
I just
little.
think I think the success they had last year compared to like the mediocrity that they're kind of basking in this year. I don't know if that switch can be turned on because I think they were riding a great high in their playoff run last year. They don't look anything like that type of team because people were picking, like, not people, but pundits were picking Minnesota before the playoffs started as a potential to make the Western Conference Finals.
Yeah.
But that was based off how the team was looking last year and through March into now going into April, at the in the next, like in a week or so. I don't think that team is playing the same way. I think it's one of those situations where, like the same way I feel about Cleveland, I think they're getting wins because they're playing Phoenix on a Wednesday and then they're playing the Kings on Friday. But I don't know if the success they had last year doesn't like kind of creep into their head if they get down 0-1 or 0-2 in the first round, which is inevitable because they're probably going to be playing a 1 or a 2 seed. Best case scenario. I don't think they're getting a 6. So they're playing a 1 or 2 seed after maybe 1 or 2 playing games. I just feel like it's too much. I think a lot of people who were there last year enjoyed that success, and now they're gonna have to try to turn it on. Like I got a first round exit for them just because I don't think they managed their team properly.
Mm-hmm. I can see that, and but I think that the Clippers is the type of team that can force a series to go an extra few games. I think the Suns are just, even though Kevin Durant has scored 38 and 42 in his last two games, and those games were against Milwaukee and Cleveland. So it wasn't against the Wizards, it wasn't against the Hornets. So, I think that Phoenix is just dead man walking. It looks good for a few games, but eventually, it's
But
only
you
so
felt
long.
Phoenix was dead man walking for a long time.
Yeah, and I mean, but I think that with these last two games that Durant has had, there's been a lot of talk of, are the Suns figuring things out? They started playing Ryan Dunn again, which I've been asking them to do since January.
Bro,
They're
it's March
finally playing them
25th.
again.
It
Yeah, it's
is
March
March.
25th. The
It's March
Celtics are not
25th.
getting bounced, lethal. The Celtics are
Cut it
fine.
out. Cut it out. The Celtics are going to NBA Finals.
They are, and
Stability wins. Like I think we have, like, we're gonna talk about Cinderella and stuff. The stability in this kind of league wins because the talent margins for your top players isn't that far. Like, yeah, you have your SGAs who's having the most efficient season ever, but a lot of your top players, your upper echelon, like great players, they're all playing equally as great. It
right,
boils down to the stability of your team, the makeup of your team, and who can I put on the floor and I know what I'm going to get out of them. I might not get the results. Like, I think Boston knows I could put Pritchard out there with the second unit and it's going to run effectively, even if I have Jalen Brown out there with them, or Horford out there with them, or Hosier out there with them, or Porzingis. You know that. I think teams like the Lakers know, like, oh, we can play through Luka and LeBron, but it has to be perfect. Obviously, Denver knows Jokic can make everything happen for them. Minnesota needs Ant to do everything, but I just don't understand, like, how they get like stability out of that position. They
yeah.
got 10 games left before the season ends. Whoever they get at 7, he can literally sit from now until the end of that first round series if he needed to. And I think Boston would be just fine.
Yeah, I think they would be just fine. What I'm saying? And then we would just be talking about the whole Jalen Brown conundrum all over again. But on a closing note, I just want to say, fuck the Philadelphia 76ers. It's the fantasy basketball playoffs going on right now. You're 23 and 49. Why the hell does Quentin Grimes need rest?
Because they don't want to pay him.
What I'm saying? It makes
They
no
don't want to have to pay him.
sense.
They don't want to give him enough games to where the fans fall in
It
love with
don't
him.
matter. He's already averaging like 25. You know what I'm saying? With them, it don't matter. He can sit out the rest. And then you got Justin
Listen,
Edwards, my undrafted Kentucky Wildcat,
you
coming
don't
through
want
with a
extra
27-point
wins.
game.
You want more ping pong balls in that thing. And I know with the Paul George trade, it might be some stipulations. Jeff Teague, I watched the pod this week, and he talked about when he went to Atlanta and they told him, "Hey man, you're gonna play 19 minutes." He's like, "What do you mean?" He's like, "What if I'm going off for 30?" He's like, "Yo, if you get 30 in 19 minutes, you good to go." But like teams start to plan for the future in game, like in season. And Philly is like, listen, we don't need unnecessary wins. We don't need to be out here like the Las Vegas Raiders, just winning ourselves out of good draft positions. Like, nah, you had a nice little run, but you're good to go.
It's Juju easily. You know what I'm saying? USC is cooked. Even though
Shout
they
out to
won the game
Juju.
by 37 last night. So I don't want to hear nobody, and I mean absolutely nobody, tell me that the women's tournament is better this year. But anyway, that's a whole nother story for a whole nother day. So hey, Cinderella time, right? So March Madness
Cinderella,
is here.
Cinderella.
We had McNeese State win a game. Okay. We had New Mexico win a game. Okay. Colorado State won a game. And
Yep.
what I'm saying, we got Arkansas still alive as a 10 seed, coached by that snake named Calipari.
Yeah, but it's a Calipari coach
but
team.
it's a Calipari coach team. So the reason that this conversation came to be because while I was on my vacation, I
Enjoying
had
the
to
sun.
I had to break my anti ESPN pledge because it was the only sports that I could find on TV. So I stumbled upon a show that wasn't half bad called Unsportsmanlike. You know, Evan Cohen, Michelle Smallman, and Chris Canty. And they got on the topic the day before the tournament of can there be Cinderellas in professional sports? And I thought it was an interesting topic because Chris Canty, as you know, played on that Giants team in 2011. That all Wes Welker had to do was catch a damn pass, no matter how badly it thrown it was. And
Yeah,
the Giants
Giselle
went,
was standing up for her man. Then that was before the
yeah,
Karate
that was
Man.
before the karate, you know what I'm saying? And
Before the
then you
Karate
had,
Man. Yeah.
you know what I'm saying, you 36 in the karate class, you Tabo ho. And you know, and as I was looking at this, Chris Canty was
What we
making the
doing?
point of look, we had Eli Manning who had already won a Super Bowl and he was a top pick in the draft. You know, and we had this defensive line that we had, you know, Tuck and Umanora, people like that. We were not a Cinderella. And I got into an argument with my hot box brethren last night because they were trying to sell me on if the Cincinnati Bengals of this season would have made the playoffs, they would have been a Cinderella. And my retort to that was, nah, because Cinderella, you don't get the shit to bed and then just get hot. Like a Cinderella is good the whole time, but it's somebody that comes out of the blue that you don't expect. So here's an example of Cinderella, or here's a few examples.
Okay.
George Mason, you know,
Correct.
VCU, Wichita State, San
The
Diego
entire
State,
Final Four a couple
FAU.
years ago.
Yeah, like you know what I mean? Those are Cinderellas that you may have heard the name before, but you didn't know anybody on the teams. So that was the argument that Chris Canty was making was like what you go to call the Arizona Cardinals of '08, was it? You go to call them a Cinderella. They had Anquan Bolden, Larry Fitzgerald, you know, what's his Kurt Warner.
Hall of Famer Kurt Warner.
That's
I
not
think Bruce
a
Arians
Cinderella.
was on the staff.
So can you, Mr. Logical, are there any sports teams professionally that you can think of that you would consider a Cinderella with that criteria?
Without doing like extensive research, because I wanted to like think this through and just have like a authentic conversation just of what I can remember in sports. I think about the Mark Sanchez Jets because I think no one really bought into Mark Sanchez as being like the quarterback that can lead a team. The defense was good, but it wasn't like 2000s Baltimore Ravens defense. It wasn't like the Purple People Eaters. They were a good defense coached
Wasn't the
by Rex
Orange
Ryan.
Crush.
It was a good defense, and like
What up,
him
Mike?
making the AFC Championship twice on my podcast. Uh, that was one thing. I thought about the Pistons that beat the stacked Lakers team. The Karl Malone, Gary Payton, Kobe, Shaq. They beat him in 5 games. But that Detroit team, they were they deliberately played tough all year long. So it was like the if you picked them over the Lakers, you picked them because you thought they were going to be tough. Even the Patriots that beat the St. Louis Rams with Tom Brady and Bucky Jones and Bill Belichick and those guys, maybe that could be your Cinderella. But then we started to see like as the years went on that Bill Belichick just was really really good at calling defense. So I think in order to be a Cinderella, you had to be poorly managed. What's going on? Poorly managed for years.
What
Case in
up?
point, I don't want to just call out your squad, but like the Wizards. If the Wizards were to turn it around say they get say they get Cooper Flag and they turn it around, or even like the Hornets or something like that. One of these teams that just been, I think the Hornets they missed the playoffs for like 9 straight years. Like they were out of it like last week. They were like, yeah, these dudes not making the playoffs for 9 straight years. If they turn it around, in order to be a Cinderella in professional league, that means you had to be poorly managed for so many years that even at a professional level, people are surprised you're being successful. So I think that's what Canty was like. We're not a Cinderella because we're a professional organization. We had top picks. Eli Manning was the number one overall pick. They probably had top picks over the line, and a lot of those people in the organization were probably with the organization when they won a Super Bowl a few years earlier. So by his estimation, like, listen, we weren't a poorly run organization, and then all of a sudden turned it on. So I think that's why it's kind of hard to call a professional team a Cinderella, because everything's even. Because Cinderella, like, is a movie I probably watched 50 times with my daughter, and Anastasia and Drizella were just literally dominating Cinderella. They were just making her do all kinds of other shit. It just wasn't fair. They weren't on a fair playing field. Whereas in the professional leagues, you're on a fair playing field until you butcher it, a la like what the Giants management team is doing currently.
So what you think about this Browns team with Baker Mayfield?
Baker they were a Cinderella.
Lethal's asking the question.
Baker,
and then lost that game to Kansas City. I think it was Chad Henne that
Chad Henne came
finished
into
the
that
game.
pass.
Yeah.
But it would fit because they were a poorly run organization. So it's not like, I don't think you're a Cinderella. I think you finally got it figured out, because the playing field is even.
Right.
So the
And
Cinderella
that was another
aspect
one
of
of his
Cinderella
points.
is like,
Yeah.
you have a disadvantage through either the structure of the game
league.
you play, the league you're in. Like, you have to have some kind of disadvantage.
Yeah.
George Mason has a disadvantage against Ohio State in the recruiting, because George Mason doesn't get the same pot of money to travel to recruit as a team like Ohio State or
Right.
Michigan or one of these other big teams. So you are at a disadvantage. The NFL, you are at the same level. It's just, how are you managing on the level you're on?
See, and
And
I
the same
think
thing with the NBA.
so to answer to that point that you just brought up, Lethal, about the wild card teams, I look at some of these teams. Like this year, the Packers were the 7th seed. So, you had Jordan Love, who just walked into Dallas last year and
Put up
bitch slapped
48
the Cowboys all over Jerry World.
with the youngest team in the playoffs.
Yeah. So like, like when maybe you could make a slight argument for the Denver Broncos this year with Bo Nix, as a rookie quarterback. Maybe you could make a slight argument there, but I still don't really think so, because when you're in a professional league, and I know what you're going to say, but I'm just going to go there anyway. Like,
Yeah.
when you look at an NFL team or NBA team or a Major League Baseball team, hockey, these teams start the season with championship aspirations. Like, yes, we know the Wizards aren't going to win the title. We know that the Hornets aren't going to win the title. But for the most part, like most of the league, 30%, 40% of the league feels like they can win the championship.
They get the same cut of money. They get to negotiate the same TV
Salary
deals,
caps,
salary
besides
caps.
baseball, yeah.
They get to hire the same type of
So
people. They get to pontificate with their local government to get their stadiums and their.
so if I was going
So
to
they
pick a
have the
sport,
same access to success. It's just a matter of, like, how do you travel that route?
if I was going to pick a sport, maybe you see Cinderella a little more in baseball. Because I went back to 03 with the Marlins, when they won it. After the fact, we know how good their pitchers are. But in the moment, it was like the Florida Marlins. This was before they became the Miami Marlins. And then they blew it up. You know what I mean? I don't think we would have been a Cinderella if we made the Super Bowl. We would have just been a team that had a great rookie that made an impact. I don't think that counts as Cinderella, because, like I said, Cinderella, or as Raph said, Cinderella, you have to have some kind of disadvantage or reason that you can't win the title. So looking at George Mason, they were in the Colonial Athletics, same with VCU at the time that they made their tournament runs, and they parlayed that to get to the A10 now. You had Wichita State that was in the Missouri Valley Conference, which, how many people can name other teams in the Missouri Valley Conference besides Wichita State at that time, who's now in the American? So at the time, you had Cleanthony Early, you had Fred VanVleet, Ron Baker. None of us knew their names. We didn't know who they were when they made that run. So we can look at it now and say, they had Fred VanVleet on their team. That's not a Cinderella, but in the moment, they absolutely were. And if you take it to college football this year, for example, you had a team like SMU, who last year was in the American. They were in the G5. They came to a Power 5 league this year, made it to the conference championship game. So if they would have beat Penn State in that playoff game, you probably could call SMU. And they're not getting any ACC money for the first 9 years, any of the TV money. So if SMU continues to do what they did this year, you could put them in Cinderella status. And while rookie quarterbacks might not ever have Super Bowl expectations, you're acting as if this is tennis where they're playing one-on-one. They got defensive players. They got Terry McLaurin. You know what I mean? Like, that's not a Cinderella. Like, you know what I mean? The Notre Dame.
And the Cinderella, like the if you think about the movie Cinderella, she literally popped up out of nowhere when everybody else was already at the ball. Like everyone's already there. These are the people that you expect to win out, and all of a sudden, this surprise team popped up. In the professional leagues, because the playoffs are tracked as long as they are, you recognize when a team is good so many weeks before the tournament starts. The reason that the Cinderella works in the NCAA tournament is because you don't know about South Dakota State Jackrabbits until they're a 14 seed and they're playing
maybe you watched they're
playing against Michigan State. Yeah, maybe
ESPN.
Because they put on ESPN. People didn't know about Gonzaga in the late 1900s. I did.
Yeah, and don't forget, John Stockton went to Gonzaga, and they still weren't a talking. Gary Payton went. I mean, even though Oregon State was in the Pac-12, Gary Payton went to Oregon State, and you know what I mean. How many tournaments have they made since Gary Payton left? So like that's why when you look at this, it's a little broader than surprise team because like let's say hypothetically, let's just say trying to think of a team that like right now that the New York Giants. We'll talk about them later, but just for the purposes of this conversation, the Giants make a playoff run. You could consider them a Cinderella until you're like, well, Malik Neighbors was a top 10 pick. They're getting another top 10 or top 3 pick this year if they don't trade out of it. They went and got Russell Wilson, who's near the end of his career, but he's a Super Bowl champion. So you know what I mean? It's like I can't call that a Cinderella. Like I just can't.
Like I said, like I said, I'll go back to the Cinderella. The playing field is even. The performance has to match success. If you just are an unsuccessful team and then you turn it around, I can't call you Cinderella. If you
say that because you're from Virginia.
Okay, that's why I always say Hallmark Cinderella and college basketball.
You say that because you're from Virginia, because George Mason was about 5 years earlier than that.
Yeah, but I wouldn't, like I said, I wouldn't consider these teams, professional teams, Cinderella just because, well, baseball, maybe because the salary cap is vastly different.
Right.
And that's probably the only thing.
I was going to say the Diamondbacks, but they had Kurt Schilling and Randy Johnson.
They had like Hall of Famers, so it's like they still get good players. Like the Kansas City Royals had their run, but they had fallen off. So maybe you can go like Cinderella there because they are going up against giant bank accounts that give other teams a true advantage. The Mets bank account versus the Brewers bank account is substantial, and now you factor in the Diamondbacks.
You can't even say that because the Royals had the runner-up MVP last year.
No, I'm talking about the year that when they made their runs, like they had the back-to-back years. But like I said, they are up against something that definitively does give you an advantage, which is how much money you can spend. I think colleges having access to money and facilities and Nike deals, because Wright State may have a Nike deal, but they're not getting the same amount of Nikes as Oregon. You know what I mean? They're not getting everybody on the staff getting all 12 pairs of shoes that come out. Like say all the shoes that come out in the month of.
Not a Cinderella. Y'all were just bad.
Bad.
And then you got good. That's not a Cinderella. Cinderella is good the whole time, from start to finish.
Yeah.
Like Wichita State went undefeated and then got matched up with Kentucky in the second round and lost. Like, you know what I mean? Like, it just happens that way. But you know, like
Yeah,
some of these teams
Cinderella
like
has to come
VCU
out
and
of
these,
nowhere. When you're a professional team, you can't come out of nowhere.
yeah, like
I think
maybe
that's
so I did think about, and then we'll wrap this up. I did think about the Miami Heat from a couple of years ago, you know, just for the fact that they were in the play-in and they made it all the way to the finals. But
more
no,
of an underdog
yeah, that's an
and
underdog versus a
less like a
Cinderella.
Cinderella.
Right.
Yeah,
Yeah.
like if UAB joined the NBA playoff run and then they won a couple of rounds in the NBA playoffs, that would be a Cinderella. But a professional team getting guys back, playing healthy, playing smart, and winning games is just they're finally figuring it out. But I wouldn't consider them a Cinderella. I
Right. But
consider it a great underdog story, but I think those are two different vernaculars that we're speaking through.
yeah, and the Giants they are the only team to win the Super Bowl with less than 9 wins since the Packers did it back in 1967. You know, so every other team has won 10 games. So like if anything, they were just a mediocre team that got hot. You
Yeah,
know, that's what that was, you know what I'm saying? But anyway, I swear to y'all, with all this Cinderella talk, it has to be March, but you wouldn't know it by watching the NCAA tournament. Because if you look at it, there's a whole lot of chalk going on, you know, outside of Arkansas, I guess, you know, John Calipari, you know. So Mr. Logical,
I'm listening.
before I went on vacation, I tried to pick a Final Four before I looked at the bracket.
Correct.
You know, that Final Four, one of those teams is eliminated already. So I had Auburn, Michigan, St. John's, and Duke. That was my Final Four coming into this. So as you can see on the screen here, we got Auburn and Michigan playing on Friday. So I guess
Yep.
that can't be the Final Four.
Yeah, I think that cancels out.
Yeah, that cancels out. So you know what I mean? You know what I'm saying? So we'll get to that, Lethal. I promise I'm gonna answer that later. You know what I'm saying? And you know, but now my new Final Four, this is my new Final Four hot off the press. So Auburn, Duke, Arkansas, and Tennessee. So as I look at this, you know, I brought this up a couple of weeks ago. San Antonio is the only time back in 2008 that all 4 1 seeds made the Final Four. You know, here we are again with 4 very strong number 1 seeds: Auburn, Duke, Houston, you know, and Florida. You know, they all have a chance to win the national title. All 4 of them alive. But I do think Florida gets got this week. I think Florida loses to Maryland as we scroll. You know, I think Florida
Yeah.
loses to Maryland. I think that there's a chance that
Even though
BYU,
Maryland needed that final shot to beat
yeah,
Colorado State,
it
you
happens.
don't
You
think
know,
it's going to carry
speak,
over?
before we even go any further, Mr. Logical, did you hear this Maryland team, their nickname?
No, what we got?
They are known as the Crab Five. So the problem that they may run into against Florida, besides the fact that Florida has Will Clayton Jr., you know what I mean? Besides the fact that Florida has Elijah Martin from that FAU Final Four team a couple of years ago, is that Maryland doesn't have any depth. You know what I mean? The starting five is probably one of the best starting fives in all of college basketball. They just don't have anything to complement it. So if there's any foul trouble, Terp's going home.
It's a drop off. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a drop off, but I'm going with that. I'm going with that. You know, this Michigan State Ole Miss game that Lethal's talking about. You know, this is one of these games because we got a couple of teams left in this tournament that have never made the Final Four. Tennessee, who has the most tournament appearances without a Final Four. Alabama, BYU,
BYU's not made the Final Four.
never made a Final Four.
It just
And
seemed
Ole
like
Miss.
that pick
And
and
Ole
roll
Miss.
offense with white guys run would make it happen.
And I'll do you one even. Yes, he did travel. And I'll do you one even better. Ole Miss has never made the Elite Eight. So watch out, Sparty, because who is Ole Miss's head coach? The woman biter Chris Beard himself. You know, who took Xavier to their first Elite Eight. who took Texas Tech to their first Final Four and national title game. So just beware. He does this. But I think Michigan State wins. I think they got too much talent.
Yeah.
Jason Richardson, is a baller. I just like the backcourt. Michigan State.
I like Izzo in the tournament when he has playmakers. I think players love to play for him, and when you have a coach like that, and you have guys who can just make plays on the ball, because Big Ten basketball isn't really known to have playmakers. It's a lot of the coach sets the tone. We run this offense. We're going to run these plays, these back cuts. This guy's going to be open on the post. We're going to win a lot of games, 67 to 59.
Yeah.
I think when you give a coach players that can make it happen with 10 seconds on the shot clock, and it's like, hey, the play's not working. Get me a bucket. When you give a coach like Izzo guys like that, it's scary. Yeah.
Yeah, he's going to have like 5 days to work on this game plan. You got BYU and Bama. I'm with you, Lethal. I'm rolling with the Tide. Mark Sears. Putting the final touches on a senior season and an All-American season. I think that BYU is going to give them a little bit more trouble than we think, though. Igor. Their main is going off. Like he's going to be a lottery pick. So BYU with the new head coach, because of course Mark Pope is at Kentucky now. But
I like
I think
BYU in this. I like BYU because I think
okay.
BYU. I like what BYU does with their players. I think their guards. And you talk about the guy that's going to be the Igor is going to be potential lottery pick.
Yes.
I just like how they manipulate the floor to get open shots for every player on the floor. I think
Right.
their bigs know hit that pick and roll hard at the top, roll to the rim. The guard, whoever's running that knows that it's guard or it's the big in the post, it's the pull up from here, or I'm kicking out to the wing and we set it back up, or it's the shot. I just felt like they were just in that game against Wisconsin. Wisconsin had the guy, he was hot. So
Yes.
sometimes
37
it's
points
like,
or something like that.
yeah, you just give it to him and let him work. And I think BYU was just countering with, we're gonna do these things that we do well, and then we're gonna play tough defense. I think BYU, it's ironic, and we talk about Utah schools all the time because we both live there. They have like a great balance of like different types of players. We would talk about the Olympic team that won bronze. It was all scores. There was no shooters. Like people say, hey, there was no white guys on the team. I think BYU football, BYU basketball, like, you know what? We're going to get some of these John Stockton like players, and they're going to get some of these guys that can jump out of the gym and catch the lob off these pick and rolls. And I think they have a great combination there. They have guys, and they're older too. A lot of BYU players are probably older than the Jazz on average. After they do their 2-year mission, a lot of these guys start playing at BYU at like 21 and a half, 22 years old.
Right.
So you have that maturity difference. A lot of guys are like married. So I just think like I think in crunch time, I think the BYU players will stick to their guns and not lose sight of like, okay, it's just a basketball game. We're gonna make these plays, we're gonna hit this pick and roll, we're gonna hit this.
Yeah, and
And
BYU's only lost one game over the last month. That game was to number 1 seed Houston. To answer your question, Lethal, what I'm saying? I would say Auburn, no order, but well, actually, I'll go order. I'll go Houston. I'll go Tennessee, Duke, Auburn, Ole Miss. I think those are your top 5 defenses left in this tournament. And as far as like offenses go, we got some of that left over too. You know what I mean? Like
BYU,
yeah, you got
Alabama,
4 top
first
25
team to 90, first team to 90 wins.
Yeah, you got 4 top 25 offenses in this tournament. You got Alabama at number 1, Duke at 12, Arizona at 17, and BYU at 25. So, like there's going to be some fireworks this weekend, lots of overs. You got Auburn and Michigan. I think Auburn sneaks out of there with the win. I think Michigan's going to give them all they want. I think you might see some overtime in this game. Michigan's guard play has been meeting the front court with Joe Wolf and Vlad Golden, who guess what? Was on that FAU Final Four team along with head coach Dusty May of that FAU Final Four team. So they are not afraid of the moment. Auburn has been a little leaky, if you will. They've 3-3 in their last 6 games. The offense has been sputtering just a little bit. So I don't know, man. They came on against Creighton, but it hasn't been consistent over the last couple of weeks. But I'm gonna trust Auburn to get it done. But that game across from there, that's what I'm looking for, Mr. Logical.
What we got?
Arizona and Duke. Arizona and Duke. Oh, sign me up for this game and twice on Sunday. So, of course, me, there's the transfer portal, like all this stuff happening. So there's a guy by the name of Caleb Love who used to play for the North Carolina Tar Heels. He was on the team that beat Coach K and Cameron in his last home game. They beat Duke in the first ever Final Four matchup between Duke and North Carolina. Here
Crazy.
he is again, waiting for some Duke. Yes, this is Duke's tournament to lose. But Caleb Love, for some reason, turns into Kobe Bryant when he sees that other shade of blue across the court. But not this time. Duke's got too much going on. Tyrese Proctor, 9 for 10 from 3 the other day. Duke's a machine at this point.
Check it out. I'm on Google under CBS.com, CBS Sports. What do you think the win probability is percentage wise? Arizona Duke. Keep in mind, it's 1 versus 4.
If I had to guess, it might be lower than expected.
All right, so it's 100% scale. So it's
yeah. But I think it's
percentage for
lower
Duke,
because
percentage for
in my mind, it would be something like 79% Duke. That's what I would say in my mind.
Hold on. You said 79% Duke?
Yeah.
Like, I'm just going to tell you 81%.
Okay. I thought it was going to be lower because for whatever reason,
the
every
fact
year
you said 79 just lets people. Yo, this is why you tune into this show. This man, I just do this on the spot. This man's a computer when it comes to this college sports stuff. Any show you watch that says anything about college sports, send it to Mike, have it vetted, and then you can believe it or not. But don't just believe it when you hear it on TV. Listen to Mike. 79%, 81%.
I thought it would be lower because Arizona is one of those teams every year that everybody falls in love with. They're a top 3 seed usually. They're 4 seed this year, but they're usually a trendy Final Four pick. Most years. So I thought it was going to be a little lower.
Flag, I like to cross, pollinate with the sports. Roy Williams is safety for the Dallas Cowboys back in the day. The one that introduced the TO rule when he pulled him and broke his ankle. He was doing an interview and they asked him, how'd you know you were ready for the next level? And he said, I felt like I was a man amongst boys on the field. It's like I can just feel that I'm not on their level. And I think people are looking at Cooper Flag and a lot of the ancillary dynamic pieces that Duke has is listen, we get that, excuse me, your star player guys, we're talking about Kentucky last year. They had a couple of guys that were projected to be top 6, top 7 picks. But Cooper Flag is projected to be the team that teams are risking coaches are risking their jobs for by tanking to get him. And he's playing like that. So I think that's probably buys into that win probability.
And that's the best part is because Duke, even though I hate their guts, they're sharing the ball. They're playing through each other, with each other. It's the opposite of what you saw with Coach Cal teams at Kentucky, when we talk about one and dones. They're buying in, and Tyrese Proctor, like I said, he's got the most 2-game 3-pointers since John Shire, the head coach of Duke, did it in 2010. You know what I mean? So, give me Duke. I do think that Arizona's going to give them a battle. You know what I mean?
You don't think it's going to look a lot like this Baylor game?
No, I think Arizona is sound enough, talented enough, good of a coach enough that I think they could keep it in single digits. So I could see it something along the lines of 81 to
Where is this
74.
game being played? Is it closer to Carolina or is it closer to
Let's
out
see
west?
here. And there's a question for you.
I got a question. Like, is Cooper Flag better than Victor Wembanyama? Yes. I'm not buying. Like, I want to say I'm not buying the Victor Wembanyama, but
It's in
we
Newark.
so that's close to. If we have 2 years of film on the Spurs with Wemby, and their win totals are exactly the same. I don't think he affects winning as much as he should for the, just the size of a person he is. I think they should be
Oh, I'm clipping
in
this shit
in,
up for real.
in the runs. I mean, we got 2 years of it, and I get it. It could be coaching, but in the same sense, is like, think about it. Like, let's go with the last, like Kyrie. Kyrie had a couple of, like, a bad run, but Cleveland was making like poor decisions management wise.
Anthony Bennett.
So like they it was just like it wasn't working out for them. Wimby is a foot and a half taller than Kyrie. He should be able to impact winning a little bit more. I think Cooper Flag is going to
Well, I
be
think
one
he
of those guys.
was this year.
They weren't, were they ever like top three? Like, when you have a guy like that after 30 games, you should be 21-9, 20-10. Give me like, if you look at the season, it was 82 games.
Well, they were
So
starting
that's
a rookie. They started a decrepit. They
cool. You
started a
give
dude
me the
that,
ball.
or
I
their best scorer besides Wimby was
should
out
be
the
Wimby.
first 20 games or so.
Their best scorer, rebounder,
Yeah.
shot blocker, assist maker,
Hey,
playmaker should be the 7'5"
as a
guy.
man once said, context is key.
He should be. That's what I'm saying. He should be that guy. I think Cooper Flag. I don't know what team, because the teams that he could potentially go to are so poorly constructed.
You get to go to
I
the
think
Hornets,
Charlotte is bad. I think Washington is bad.
Utah, but he fits
I
right in
think
Utah, right?
he fit. I think he fits in Utah because I think Utah will treat. I think
And
Utah will
Utah's
roll out the red carpet
and
because,
Utah's head coach is a former Celtic assistant. It writes itself.
yeah. So if you think about Charlotte, LaMelo is still the man there. If you think about Washington, Jordan Poole is still the man there, quote unquote. Utah, I think who feels like they are that guy would have to take a backseat to Cooper Flag. I don't
Yeah.
think LaMelo is taking a backseat to Cooper Flag.
I don't know if Cooper Flag is athletic enough, but not that this person is like crazy athletic, but I've seen people rate him as low as Keith Van Horn, but I see a little tiny bit of Kawhi sometimes when I look at Cooper Flag. Just a little bit.
Van Horn, that's a good one with the Sox.
Yeah. Just a little bit.
I don't know, because like the new NBA is different. I mean, he really could be like, what's the boy name from the Bulls?
Buzelis.
Buzelis. They're probably about the same length, size. I'm not.
Y'all
I'm
gotta
not.
stop. Y'all gotta stop. No, not you. They gotta stop this Trey Young shit, man. Like, you gotta stop this Trey Young shit.
What? What? I mean, I guess.
You gotta stop this shit. You just being lazy comparing a white boy to a white boy. But hey, Houston and Purdue, it's gonna be a good matchup. It's in Indianapolis. So I understand why you would say
That's tough.
Purdue over
That's
Houston.
tough.
But I
Indiana
do
loves their
remember
basketball.
But I do remember Houston going into Birmingham last year and bitch slapping Auburn. Houston's got the number one defense in the country. Purdue's got shooters that shoot too much, if that makes sense. They take bad shots for how good of shooters they are. Braden Smith has been balling, so I got to give credit where it's due. The fact that they're in the Sweet 16 the year post Zach Edey,
I really like Zach Edey. I wish he would. I wish he would get more like.
yeah,
More
more
running.
burn. But
Yeah, I
yeah,
like Zach
I'm taking
Edey.
Houston. I'm taking Houston, but I do think that it comes down to the wire and makes Houston sweat a little bit. You know what I'm saying? And then, of course, Texas Tech and Arkansas. I'll be quick with this one. Texas Tech has been dominant in the paint during these first couple of games of the tournament, plus 32. Arkansas is too long. You know what I mean? They got too many long arms. Boogie Flan is back. I've been talking about him since day one. I think he's going to be a surprise NBA player. He missed half of the season this year with an injury. He's back now. And here you are. You see them knocking off St. John's because
Yeah.
this is what Coach Calipari does. This is a team, not a Cinderella. They started 0-5 in the SEC. They finished 8-10 in the SEC. But they got talent. And this is one of the teams that you just don't want to see in your bracket comes March, because when you see them initially, you say they went 8-10 in the SEC. How good can they
How
be?
good could they be?
But then all it takes is for one game for it to click.
Like I said, I talk about the NBA playoffs is like all it takes is for a good coach to recognize this is their liability, this is our strength. We're gonna play to it for the next. Like, say it takes them 10 minutes to figure out, oh, they can't. This guy will
Oh,
not shoot the
Darius
ball.
Garland can't. He really is 6 foot instead of 6'1".
Yeah, so it's like once you recognize that, it's like, and I think Calipari is a genius. I think Calipari, I don't even know if he coaches on the sideline. I think he just gives guys like ego boost and
Yeah,
wisdom,
I think
and then they just go out and just like, listen, maybe we'll go out here and take over
I think
Space
he's
Mountain. You
more
with me? And
I
he's like,
think
all
he's
right,
more
bet,
of
let's
a
do
life
it.
coach. I think Calipari is more of a life coach than a basketball coach. Like, he has this ability to blend people together, manage the
Old school
egos,
coach. Patino,
make them
same
play
way.
together. You know what I mean? So from that standpoint, yes, X's and O's, he ain't the one.
Yeah.
You know what I'm
Go
saying?
out there and play for each other.
There is
You
no
guys are
Cinderella
basketball
in the tournament.
players.
Yeah, which we'll get to in a second. But
Yeah,
Kentucky,
Arkansas, I wouldn't consider them a Cinderella.
Kentucky going for the I don't even know, the sweep, the 3-time sweep over Tennessee. I mentioned Tennessee has never made the Final Four before. What's standing in their way is Kentucky and Houston or Purdue. So look, back in November, this is full disclosure. Back in November, I went out and put me some money down on the Vols to win the national title. I went and put some money on them, saying 19 grand coming my way if they could do it. But look, this is the thing. I
Hey,
don't
fuck
trust
it.
Rick
Adam,
Barnes.
we're going with Tennessee. I'm going with Tennessee the rest of the way.
I don't trust Rick Barnes. We've been talking about Rick Barnes every year. Me and Coach Will got into a huge argument about whether if this dude is a great coach or not. All I'm gonna say is the last time Rick Barnes made the Final Four, he had TJ Ford in his starting lineup.
Them big ass shorts.
And I'm gonna leave it at that. Tennessee is always a good team that plays disciplined ball. The problem is when they run into these type of offenses, they can't keep up, because as good as your defense is, sometimes the offense is just
Good
better.
offense beats good defense
Yes.
any
And,
day of
and
the
my
week.
guy Oway, what I'm saying? My guy Carr, my guy Kobe Bree, they coming for some Tennessee, but I'm just scared to pick Kentucky because Kentucky already beat them twice. You know what I mean? And they were close matchups. So, it's one of those things where I think seeing them the third time just gives Tennessee an edge.
I mean, I like that you're not a full on homer. Like, you didn't pick Kentucky, you didn't pick Maryland.
Well, I
Well,
did pick Maryland.
you did
Yeah, I
pick
did pick
Maryland, but
Maryland.
you didn't
Yeah.
really say it with your chest. I
Yeah.
respect it. Um, I think the conversation surrounding the lack of Cinderellas. Every tournament is not supposed to look the same every year. Like, I think before the parlays every single week, this was like the time of the year where like all the sports fans wanted the miracle to happen. And when it boils down to it, it simply doesn't. It's just not enough basketball players available for D1 programs to create these Grand Canyons going on to the Elite Eight every single year, or High Point, or even teams like Troy just making these long, substantial runs. It's just not enough players out there for it. A lot of it
Well,
is
that's
just
what I was going
simply
to ask you. That was
my
the next
player
question.
is my group of players, the whatever, even if you want to say the NIL package that I can offer, but just my group of players is just better than yours because we have the resources here at this university. And like you
Mhm.
talked about a lot of transfers and the transfer portal opened, I guess, yesterday.
Mhm.
The NCAA has to figure out that, like, just logistically with college football and college basketball. Because even if you are talking about, oh, these players need to be enrolled in school by this date, it's post holiday, especially for college football. It's post holiday. Most schools don't go back until about, we'll say, the second week of January. So call it the sixth, fifth, sixth, seventh, eighth, somewhere in that window. So you get New Year's on a Wednesday. Kids don't go back to school until the following Tuesday. So it's like it's not as if you got to get these guys transferred in before this date. And the professor knows whatever amount of work he gave this player, he can get it to him later. But that's neither here nor there. That's just me thinking out loud
Well,
logistically.
I've been seeing people like
Oh,
Jay Williams, who I love, by the way. I've been seeing people like him asking this question, and I think they're just overreacting. But the question is NIL killing Cinderella? And I don't think that it is. You know what I mean? We still got upsets in the first round of the tournament. You know what I mean? Like you just didn't have teams executing in
the
week
the
two.
the
When
the,
you're
the lack of critical. I want to be dismissive, but the lack of critical thinking when it comes to that question is ridiculous for these coaches. Like, yo, look, there's always been a monetary disadvantage for other schools. The top schools always had more money. Yeah, they can't come out and say flat out, hey, I'm BYU. I'm giving this top ranked guy $4 million to come here. So I think really the teams that generally didn't do well with recruiting, but was good with money. Because BYU, it's based on the Mormon religion. That's a big catalyst of the school. Mormonism is like the second richest religion in the world behind
right.
Catholicism. So they're going to be able to buy a $5 million player every single year. But Oregon has the other world's greatest religion, which is Nike. And they're going to be able to get guys every single year if they need to. Just like every other school to have Jordan schools. Jordan's gonna be like, you know what? I think Carolina needs 3 or 4 million to kick back. Hey man, release these Jordans and all the profits from that send it to North Carolina so they can buy this player. That's the difference with
Yeah,
NIL. But
I think that
before then, these other schools are already getting this money.
I think that
it's a lazy argument to be like, oh, NIL is doing it. Like, nah,
I think NIL hurts your schools like Evansville and Loyola Marymount. Maybe a school like Lamar. You know what I'm saying? A school like
I don't think
Youngstown
honestly,
State. From the stand,
and
hold
this
on, wait, just from the
yeah.
standpoint of if you're a team that is below average in your conference. So if you're a team like Evansville, who finished last in the Missouri Valley, and you still have good players on that team that another mid major might steal. So now you're possibly pulling from Division Two, or you're pulling from
Yeah,
NINA
but
or
you
NAIA,
probably finished last 8 years ago without the NIL money.
right?
It
But people
your
weren't stealing your
program needs
players.
money.
Like
You
Kobe
can
Bryant
okay,
from Kentucky, he came from Dayton. You know what I mean? Like
so if you
some of
stole
these
my
guys,
player and
some
I
of these
went,
guys are coming like
I got a
Will
30
Clayton. Will
game,
Clayton.
I got a 30 game season, and I went 11-19 in 2018, and now the NIL deal's popping off, and I went 10-20. We were bad. I mean, eight
Right,
years
but
ago.
you got a guy like Will Clayton who buried UConn the other day for Florida. He came from Iona. You know what I mean? And he's up here with the Gators averaging 8. So it's not just as if Florida or whoever is going to Maryland or
But
Purdue
Arkansas
and
will
saying, "We want
probably
this
pull
guy."
in 3 or 4 5 stars.
They pulled
That
him from
guy,
Kentucky. He
that
took his
guy,
players from
yeah, he
Kentucky.
took the players from Kentucky, and then now I'm a player. You get 2 5 star guys,
You
and you get them to come to Kentucky
VCU still made
or
the
from
turn.
Kentucky. from Kentucky to Arkansas,
Yeah.
and then Calipari doesn't play them in this game, and they lose the next game they play in the tournament, they lose. I'm still a 5-star talent. Maybe Purdue needs me.
Maybe
So I'm
Izzo
going.
won't.
Maybe is the one. So it's like I'm going from Arkansas to Michigan State. So it's not as if players that are moving are only moving from small school to big school. Like you said, those guys were from Kentucky to Arkansas. Kentucky is a basketball powerhouse. Arkansas dwarfs them as far as success, but Calipari went to Arkansas. Those players went from Kentucky to Arkansas.
Arkansas
I
dwarfs
don't think
Kentucky.
I don't think
Is that
you
what
would
you
think
said?
about, like, I know Arkansas has their run. They had their
Okay,
run, but if,
okay.
if
Let's
you
not
if
get
you think
yeah.
about NBA, no, if you think about NBA players, if when we put those little posts in our group chats, like Duke, North Carolina, Kentucky, and we put all their 5 players, like who would win in a 7 game, whatever. I don't know if there's 5 guys from Arkansas that we would put up that would
There ain't.
challenge the Duke, or
What you gonna
that's
do?
what that's
Put Corliss Williamson up in there?
that's what I'm saying. Like, it's not a matter of, like, I think
Oh, I thought
they
you were
like the
saying it the
money.
other way around.
Yeah.
I thought you were saying that Arkansas was dwarfing Kentucky.
No, 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 no. Like Arkansas is like a team they've never outshadowed Kentucky, but yet Kentucky players went there because of the coach. I
Right.
think the NIL argument is just, I think coaches who don't like NIL and pundits who don't like NIL can just say that. But like I said, you asked 2 follow-up questions like, yo, did you think Ohio State and Florida, when they played in the national championship in 2008, you think Akron and Bowling Green had the same opportunity to have Chris Leak and Tim Tebow on their team? No. Even though
No, but
one
I
of them
tell
had
you that
played,
LeBron James could save Akron right now. You know what I'm saying? Just saying.
he got to sink he got to sink half his money in the Akron to turn them around.
He'll get it back. But hey, I promised Lethal we would answer his question. So, Mr. Logical, before we start talking about the New York
Let's
Giants,
hear
I'm
it.
going to ask you Lethal's question.
Oh, I love lethal questions because they come from the heart.
The Lethal bag. What is a Super Bowl matchup that we will never see again?
Never.
Never.
That's already occurred, or just
Yes,
a
like a Super Bowl
combat.
that we've seen that we won't see again.
This is goofy. I'm gonna say it, but I'm gonna come off with it. Say Jets Colts because they're both in the AFC.
No, that
Uh,
don't count.
I know. Super Bowl matchup we'll never see again that has occurred. Mm,
I got one.
I'm trying because I think NFL, like, you got a shot,
I
and I
got
don't think.
I
I
got
mean,
one.
Bears Colts.
That's a good one. I was going to go with Green Bay, New England.
Why not?
Well, one, you know what I'm saying, by the time New England get good enough, Jordan Love is going to be out of the league or, injured anyway. And I think that the
I think
Patriots
Vrabel,
are
I
just,
think Vrabel can turn them around. I think Vrabel can turn them around. Giants,
yeah,
because
that's,
the Giants are such a.
I mean, all the Giants got to do is fire Joe Shane and they're right back in the
I
game.
think the Giants, because they are New
You trying
York.
to say the same shit you said. That don't count.
Yeah, I think the Giants, because they are New York. I think they'll. I think they'll be able to attract free agents if they draft. The problem is they didn't create any optimism this current off season. Getting rid of that coaching staff creates a buzz. I think they get rid of that coaching staff, and then maybe the number 3 pick feels like it's going to be a smart pick for that team because you hired Vrabel. Like, you hired Vrabel from up under New England. You got rid of Dayball. You got rid of Shane. You brought in some analytics, 37-year-old GM, and now it's like, oh, I think Vrabel's going to, like, yo, you see what he did with Tannehill?
Yeah.
Um,
I got two more for you, and then we'll move.
Cardinals, Steelers.
Okay, that's a good one. That's a
I
good
think
one.
that's a good one because I think the Steelers simply can't get the quarterback right, and you have to have the quarterback right.
Now we can get
Bengals
that one. I
49ers,
think we
I
can get
think
that
that's realistic because if you keep Shanahan and you suffer through a bad year this year potentially, you could because Shanahan's offense makes guys look great offensively, and then he brought back solid to take care of the defense, which could turn young guys into real stud players. Because I think their defense is pretty simple. Because like even Steve Wilkes, the year that they went to Super Bowl against the Chiefs, his points per game were very close to the solid years that they went to the Super Bowl. So I think they keep the defense simple enough to where you can plug and play a great young player in there, and he could turn into Fred Warner or turn into Greenlaw or turn into Navari Bowman or something like that.
They always
So
gonna
I
have a
think
run
San
game,
Francisco
right?
they're always gonna have a run game. I think players, I think offensive players will always want to go to Shanahan because keep in mind, Matt Ryan won an MVP with Kyle Shanahan as offensive coordinator. I think Sanu threw 4 touchdowns in that season.
So I got two more, and then we'll go on to the Giants. So
Dolphins, Dolphins, Redskins, Dolphins, Commanders. The Dolphins because I think they're a poorly managed franchise. I think they're going to fire McDaniel midseason if it doesn't go well, and they're going to be behind the
they
eight
should
ball.
though. um, I got Raiders Eagles. Because
Eagles,
they,
the Raiders on a serious franchise either.
yeah, because they got Pete Carroll now, but when he leaves, then what? You know what I'm saying? And then the Eagles going to have to start paying a bunch of people, start losing some players, and they get set back for a little bit. And then Panthers Broncos.
Nah,
You got
I
Bryce
don't
Young
know.
in the Super Bowl.
I'd like.
How long would it take Carolina to get to a Super Bowl? As constructed right now, how long would it take Carolina to get to a Super Bowl?
Where are they? Where are they picking this year?
I want to
If
say
you had to
they're
guess,
6.
I think the problem is I can't trust Bryce Young's size.
Oh, they're
If
8.
he was, if he was Jordan Love's size, I think I could do. But like a lot of times, man, Jordan Love just holds on, and gets hit a lot. Um, I think the Panthers believe in their coach. So you said Panthers Broncos.
Yeah.
I mean, long as if Philly's playing the way they're playing, it's gonna be hard to win that AFC. But that doesn't seem crazy to me because I don't think the dysfunction. The owner does give me pause. That's the only thing because the division is easy to win. I mean, Baker's doing his thing, but
All right.
Tampa
Let me
Bay's paying guys.
watch me
So
walk this out real
Tampa
quick.
Bay Raiders, Tampa Bay Raiders. I think that'd be
That's
the
a good
one.
one. Let me walk this out real quick.
All
Why
right,
won't the Panthers make the Super Bowl? You ready?
let's hear
Ready?
it.
Okay. And I'm writing these down as I say. So Eagles, Washington, Dallas has to get better within the next, 2 to 3
I'm gonna
years.
work on the assumption that Dallas won't get better.
Okay, but
I,
even
'cause I
okay,
just
even if I don't
they
count Dallas,
haven't given me enough.
even
I think they're in more turmoil than they are, and I think they're
even
going to
even
pay
if I
Michael
don't
Parsons
count
like
Dallas,
$40 million a year.
even if I don't count Dallas, right?
Okay,
You got Michael Penix about to take off. You got
Atlanta can't stop a nosebleed.
they will. You know what I'm saying? Then you got Detroit potentially, what I'm saying, in their way as far as they might not win a Super Bowl, but the Panthers can't beat them.
But
You got
when's
Green,
Jared Goff's next extension? If
you got
it's within the next year or so, I don't know if they want to pay him $62 million.
I think he's not a free agent until we looked this up a couple of weeks ago, but I forgot
Yeah,
now. But
I hate
Jared Goff.
sidetracking you, but it's like I like the
No,
conversation.
no, no, I like it. You know what I'm saying? Jared Goff is a free agent. He signed an extension through 2028, 4 years, 212.
Extensions normally start happening with 2 years left for
Yeah,
quarterback.
yeah.
So the end of
26. So the end of
25,
next season,
26. End of next season or end of
not next
25,
season, but I'm
26?
sorry, the
So
next
he'll
next.
go into 26, 27, good to
Right, and then
go,
yeah,
and then
yeah,
have the conversation. I think they're
right.
gonna have the conversation before 26, 27 starts, all
And
right?
I would think so.
Yeah.
Then you got Kevin O'Connell just waiting on a quarterback, right? Then you got, if you want to trust the 49ers, but we'll see about the 49ers.
I'll put Carolina above the 49ers because I think the 49ers they're
You
gonna
get
pay Brock a bunch of money
you
and
get
hope
McVay.
that other things hit.
You get McVay
McVay's
with it.
taking his bag and going home.
He's
He's
out of
leaving
there.
Tom Brady. Yeah,
He's out of
he's
there.
leaving Tom Brady calling games.
And then if Seattle can play defense the way that Mike McDonald can coach defense, they're going to be a tough out. You know what I mean? So I think the Panthers got a long road to hoe, if you will. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
Like,
that's tough.
yeah.
I'm
And
trying to
then,
think of another matchup that I saw. Bills, Cowboys. I mean, that's an easy one because the Cowboys have had like the lack of success getting to championship games is tough. Um,
I got one.
that we'll
Rams
never see
Titans.
again.
Rams Titans.
We'll see what the Titans do with the number one overall pick.
I don't care what the Titans do with the number one draft
No,
pick.
like we'll see what they're. We'll see. We'll gauge their seriousness level. If they go out there and say, you know what, we get an offensive tackle, we run it back with Will Levis.
They go out
Or
here
the
and get Abdul Carter. You know what I'm saying? We'll see.
Steelers. The Steelers are easy pick because I they won't.
Actually,
They're
you know
never
what?
gonna.
I
They
got a
won't be
question.
poor enough to get. They won't be poor enough to get a top rated quarterback in a
Yeah.
good quarterback year unless they get rid of Mike Tomlin. So the
Yeah, I was
Steelers have
about
to
to
have a
say,
bad
last
year.
question, real quick. Last
They
question.
got to fire Mike Tomlin,
When the
have a
Steelers,
4-13 year,
whenever the
and then go
Steelers,
get Arch Manning or some shit like that.
whenever the Steelers win their next playoff game, will Mike Tomlin be the coach that led them to it?
Who did they sign?
They got DK.
No, quarterback.
They're waiting on Aaron.
Okay, nah. That's what I mean. Like
They
that's
did
that's what I'm saying.
sign
It's like
they signed
I need
Skyler. Oh, they signed Skylar Thompson and Mason Rudolph.
they need a guy right now that can look DK Metcalf and George Pickens in the eye and be like, listen, don't come back to the huddle with no bullshit. I'm gonna get you the ball. That guy doesn't exist right now in free agency. I don't know if you get that with a rookie because I think off the top of my head, without looking it up, Pittsburgh's somewhere around 18 to 22
They're
drafting.
21.
Yeah, so they're 21. Maybe you get Jackson Dart to slip to you at 21, but I don't know if they pull that trigger. Oh, look at that. A-Rod and Jackson. Look, me and
Yeah.
Lito on the same page. That's
Yeah.
crazy.
So
Because I never even
I
thought
guess
of
they
that as a
cut.
possibility until just
Yeah,
now.
so I guess they cut
That's
Skylar
crazy.
Thompson in
Shout out
that
to Lito.
scenario. But yeah, on to
That's
the
the only thing I
Giants.
can think of. Like you
So
gotta hope that like one of these guys, but Kenny Pickett slipped to them in that year with Malik Willis, Desmond Ritter, and Kenny
hometown
Pickett.
kid and everything.
He was in the building all the time. Yeah, you shouldn't have let him in. You should have let him stay at the casino right next to the stadium. Let him gamble his time
Go
away.
home,
And he wasn't
Roger.
a good quarterback. Yeah, he's on his
You
third
know,
team already.
but here you go. The Giants. So last week, while I was on vacation, said I saw some stuff about like, hey, they went out and got famous Jameis. And I was like, okay, they got their backup to help their rookie along the way. And then as I was changing a car battery today, got a notification. It was like Russell Wilson to the Giants 1 year, $10.5 million. So I like the 1 year, but Mr. Logical,
10
what
and
the
a
hell you
half.
doing?
I saw something that said 21.9.
Oh, I saw a 10.5. Let me look it up real quick, but what you
Unless
think
I'm tripping, because I
Let me
thought I
see.
said I saw 21.9. Unless I
Let me
read it
see.
wrong.
Oh, it's worth up to 21 million. So that's with the incentives and all that. It sounds like.
So that means at 3, excuse me, I'm gonna cough here for a second and pause my microphone. those May allergies when you get old, or March allergies, excuse me. So that means at 3, are you Travis Hunter?
That's what I'm thinking. So he got 10.5 guaranteed. With his incentives, he could get up to 21.
What is this? Like, who signs these deals?
I mean, think about it. Like, who's at 3? Like, okay, so Travis Hunter. Maybe you get Will Campbell to help the offensive lineup. You got Abdul Carter if you want to create your monster defensive line because you got Thibodeau and
Rumor has it,
Ryan Burns.
last mock draft I looked at has Abdul Carter going 2 to Cleveland, Cam Ward 1, Abdul Carter 2. But I think that one had Shador going 3 to the Giants before the Russ news.
So does that lead Shador to the Raiders?
Raiders, unless there's been internal conversations and rumblings and text
Stop it,
messages
Mike.
and emails saying that he's only going to work for Tom Brady. But if I'm the Raiders, that's a no-brainer.
The Giants
Just
really
bring
going
him
to
in.
start a black quarterback to start the season?
Nah, they're gonna go out and get Mason Rudolph or something from Pittsburgh.
No, he's
and
with the
start him.
Steelers now.
Nah, they'll figure it out. I mean, listen, I think the black quarterback conundrum for the Giants is it's odd. It's definitely odd. Um, the Saints said they're happy with Spencer Rattler.
If Sanders go to NO, we gonna pray for him. That's what.
He's Dion. Dion's gonna pull his Archie Manning and make sure that he doesn't go to New Orleans. I'm gonna say the Jameis Russell Wilson signing in the same week when you kept the coaching staff from last year, when you kept the GM that said publicly, or like at least while knowing he was being recorded, that Saquon essentially, paraphrasing, wasn't a viable piece to an offense when you have Daniel Jones as a quarterback. When his own son was in his office saying, "Go get Jaden Daniels," it's just, and then the owner or team president, or however the Maras divide up their responsibilities in the organization, saying, "I'm gonna lose sleep
It's kind of
if
funny now.
Saquon goes to Philly." It's like, for all of that to happen, and then you say, "You know what? We're gonna run it back next year," and then you run it back with Russell Wilson, who's I think he's a good person. I think he's a good,
He has a
like,
great
solid.
personality.
I think I think he won't come in and ruin anything, but it's been 2 teams now that's showing you, like, yo, he does not resonate with the players. He does not inspire the
I
players.
still can't
He
get
is
over
not a
that linebacker
resilient
in
athlete.
Denver yelling at him. Remember that when he threw the pick or whatever, and he was coming back to the sidelines.
The offensive lineman rode over to him, right? Yeah.
So
So,
they was
like,
just,
now he's on his 4th team. I think there was the
But
final
hey,
game of
I
the
think there's a
year when he
parallel
held
that
on
we're
to the ball. When he held on to the ball in that final game where he could have thrown the ball and saved like 40 seconds, and they end up losing, he went up to Cam Hayward. It was like, "Let's win these next 4," like, on the field. Like, he's like mic'd up. He's like, "Let's win these next 4." Like, basically, we're in the
like, man,
playoffs.
get the fuck out of
Get
here!
the
Like,
fuck out of here. Like, that's how people feel. Like, why would you say, "Let's win these next 4" when you had the ball in your hand? We could have won this
we
one.
could have avoided Baltimore another week.
You fucked it up. You fucked it up by not doing your job. Like, throw the ball out of bounds. We still got 2nd down. You ran it across the line of scrimmage and got tackled. Way under.
But here's
Way
here,
under.
here you know what? There's a parallel that
9
we're
starts
missing.
should be your over under. 9 starts under.
There's a parallel that we're missing here. We've been talking half of the offseason and playoffs about how awful the Giants are, how
Correct.
about to be awful the Steelers should be,
Correct.
not realizing that they're ran by the same family.
Now I think no, they're like interconnected. I think like
I think they're
somebody
related,
married to
right?
the
Because
other
there's the
one.
sisters, right? The girl with the
No,
dragon tattoo.
yeah, they're married. So it's like
It's the same family.
one girl's name is her name is Rooney Mara,
Yeah,
and then the other girl that was in the Fantastic Four, her last name was Mara. I think there's like a
there's
marriage link
like a
to it.
yeah.
Yeah.
Same family of bullshit is all I see.
Yeah.
But hey, like I just thought
Thanksgiving
about
they all talk the same nonsense. Yeah.
yeah, I just thought about this. I didn't even have this on the topic, but since we're talking about football, close out the show with this. Um, so I read a report while I was on vacation that the Detroit Lions are leading a revolution to change the playoff seeding. Because these teams that don't win the division, like Minnesota, that win 14 games, have to go on the road in the first round. What say you? Yes, the
Nope.
Giants are lethal. Yes, they are.
They're exactly how bad we think they are.
They're
If we
exactly
think
what I thought they were.
if we think there are 3-14 teams, and that's exactly what they are. No, I don't like it. I like the format the way that it is. I like the format of win your division, get a home playoff game. I think it's the simplest format. I think it's the way that I'm not sure how long it's been that way. I because I never really paid attention to it, but I don't think because there was the year that Seattle won their division was the same year at 7-9. It was the year that Marshawn Lynch had that
The run against
earthquake
the Saints.
registering
Yep.
run against the Saints.
Yep.
So the format is easy. I know going into the season as a Packer fan, as a Rams fan, as a Giants GM, as a Colts head coach. If I win my division, I get a home playoff game. That's it. That is all you need to get the ball rolling. If you win 13 games, you don't win your division because somebody else is really good. You got to play them twice. Beat them. You get to determine who leads your division. So if you got to go 15-2 because the Detroit Lions look like they're going to go 14-3, then you got to go 15-2. But just because some other team doesn't, that's not your concern. Your concern is what happens in the NFC North, AFC North, NFC East, AFC East when you're Buffalo, Miami, New England, and uh, the Jets. You're concerned with the AFC East. Can I win that division? That's it.
So, I want to borrow a phrase that you used earlier:
Let's hear it.
critical thinking.
I got you.
So, yes, like in college football, right? You look at these schedules and you say, hey, the SEC and the Big Ten play tougher schedules. They should get more playoff teams. It makes sense, regardless of who won the conferences or whatever. Like, you're like, this team played a tougher schedule. So, when I look at the NFL, for example, this year, Minnesota went 14-3. Salute to them. Their only losses were to the Lions and the Rams. Those are literally the only two teams that beat the Vikings this season. So, are the Vikings a team worthy of having a home playoff game? Sure. But this is the problem. All schedules aren't created equal. So, when you go and look at Minnesota's schedule, you know who their crossovers were there this year? The AFC South and the NFC West. So, you got fat off a hamburger helper.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? You weren't out here eating escargot, aka snails. You weren't out here eating that great delicacy. You were out here snacking on chili mac. And you think that you deserve a playoff game at home over a team that won their division. Now, when I look at it in my head, it does look weird But when I look at the AFC for example, for this year, the only thing that would have changed in the AFC playoffs if we did this, the only thing
We're
that would
not
have
changing nothing.
the
Like
only
all of this stuff can you can save it because you already know what the rule is when you come into the season. You win your division, you because you can't have nuances in the middle of
well, not
stability.
only that, but you can't keep reacting to everything that doesn't go your way. Like, because that
It
might
doesn't
happen this
happen all
year,
the
but then
time.
next year there might not be a team that wins that many games. You know what I mean? But if we would have did that this year, the only thing in the AFC that would have changed was where the Houston LA playoff game was played. It would have been in LA instead of Houston. The rest of the seeds would have been the exact same. You know what I'm saying? In the NFC, it gets a little funky, right? Because you would have had, you had Washington, you had Green Bay, who won more games than Tampa. So Tampa would have been the 7th seed this year. You know what I mean? But I don't think it makes a difference because at the end of the day, this ain't the NBA playoffs or NHL baseball where you got to win 4 out of 7. This is line up across from somebody, hit them in the mouth, hit them
And win.
harder than they hit you. So it don't matter if you want to get to the play. Just like, okay, we were talking about college basketball. I picked out my Final Four. Oh, I'm in Duke's bracket. Guess what? If you want to win the national title, you might just have to beat
You
Duke.
got to beat Duke,
To
and
beat
that's
a man, you got to beat the man.
because the NFL. And I understand this team won 10 games. This team won 9. I understand the math of it, but because that's not what's in practice, that's not the standard, that's not the expectation. Because there's an anomaly, doesn't mean I have to alter the rules. I don't even like the altered rules for the playoffs that they had since Buffalo didn't get the ball back against Kansas City a few years ago. You knew what the rules were because if Buffalo would have gotten the ball and scored a touchdown, they would not have petitioned the league to change the rule. They only changed the rule because they felt like they missed out on something. Minnesota didn't have a great run in the playoffs. They lost in the first round.
Right.
Detroit lost their home playoff game to Washington. So it's not like simply because we redraw these lines for you to appease your sensibility of I had 10 wins, does that translate to victory? So why am I altering these things when as the format played out, you did not succeed at anyway? So
Yeah, and
the
that's
standard is the standard. Shout out to Mike Tomlin. The
and
standard is the
remember,
standard. You know what it is. Go play and exceed that.
you know what I mean. And think about it like this. So I brought up Minnesota, playing the AFC South and I forgot the NFC West. You
Yeah.
know, Tampa played the AFC West in the NFC East.
Yeah. And then you play your other games are a first place schedule, a second place schedule, a third place schedule, or a fourth place schedule. So there's so many nuances to the schedule. It's not just the total number of wins at the end of the year. There's so many things that go into it that having
That's
a
not what I'm
simple
laughing at.
guideline.
That's not what I'm
What's
laughing
that? What you said before? What?
at.
That's nothing to do with it.
Tell me
You just
more,
want to
Mike.
mention
Tell
in
me
the show.
more.
No,
Um,
block him. I'm joking.
tell me
I got
more,
you.
Mike.
Right. That's nothing to do with it.
No,
The
I
playoff rules should not be the same as the regular season because
I don't think they should
you
be
can't
either.
have guys playing 2, 3 extra quarters in October when it's not a do or die situation. In the playoffs, another team has to go on to the following week. You
I
can
think that
end
the
you
regular
can end
season
your week in a tie.
I think the regular season should go back to the old school sudden death, first score wins.
You
And
have
I'm good
60 minutes.
and I'm good with the playoff rules as they are, but I want their sudden death back for the regular season.
Yeah. I
No,
like
but you
sudden
can't you
death.
can't even do that though, Lethal, because like you know what I mean? Because then
You don't
what'll
need
happen?
strength of
What'll
schedule.
yeah, you don't want
We already have a thing. That's the thing. We are trying to institute more things into a standard we already have set. We already have the standard set. We don't need to make it easier or more appeasing to teams that maybe didn't fit into that bubble, because that's not the common thing. That's the
Yeah, until
exception to the
Minnesota would have
rule.
won that home playoff game and then lost to Philly the next week. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
Yes, I am okay with games ending in ties in the regular season. Yes.
you have your opportunity to win. You get 70 minutes. You get 70 minutes to beat another team across from you by at least
Yeah.
1 point.
If you can't
If you
score,
can't, you can't.
if I give you if you go into overtime tied and you start with a 10-minute clock and you cannot score, you do not deserve to win. I'll put it like that. You want to go 4th and 1, and you can't get that 1 yard, it just wasn't meant for you to win.
Yeah, it happens. Regroup, come back on Wednesday, and practice throughout the week, and come back again next Sunday, Monday, Thursday, whatever
Yep.
your next
Ties
game
ain't
is.
never hurt hockey. It ain't never hurt soccer. You know what I'm
It's
saying?
just a matter of it's not gonna all.
Everybody did get a chance to possess the ball in the whole 60 minutes before overtime.
Yep, everyone had the
Tell your
ball.
defense to get a stop.
Get a stop. That's
Don't
it.
talk
That's
to
it.
me about how football is the toughest sport. It's a man sport. It's all this stuff, and we trying to find ways to not hurt your feelings.
Get a stop. Get the ball back. A
See,
strip
but
sack doesn't take that long.
you answering my questions for me, Lethal.
Well, a team
You
can't
don't
hold the ball
deserve to
10 minutes
win.
without getting yards. You got to
If you
get
hold the ball
yards.
for
Don't
10
give up
minutes and
yards.
can't, if you let them hold the ball for 10 minutes and you cannot force a punt or you cannot force a turnover within a 10-minute possession, you don't
Incomplete
deserve to
pass stops the
win.
clock. Even if they ran the ball, if they don't get a first down, they got to punt. And if they go for it on fourth, stop it. Now you got the ball back.
Yeah, remember the whole reason that the overtime rule changed in the playoffs was because Josh Allen didn't get a chance
And
to touch the
Buffalo
ball.
didn't get the ball back, and they
Now,
petitioned and
since
they
they've
changed
changed
the
that
rule.
rule, I'm sure Josh Allen appreciates all the Super Bowls that he's won.
Yeah, and the funny thing about it, them changing that rule got Kansas City a Super Bowl last year because San Francisco would have won. Well, I guess the touchdown rule or whatever, but they got the ball back. Since they changed it from sudden death, San Francisco gets the ball, they go down sudden death, kick the field goal, game over. That's it. But they added the touchdown thing, and I get it. I get that we all can't just be rigid, and I get that we have to have some flexibility. But I don't think that's one of the pieces that I don't think that's one of the pieces that needs to be flexed,
Right.
because it's not. It didn't hinder the process of the game, and like I said, I don't think like I said, with the winning your division, I think as far as the NFL is looking at it like this. Is like, listen, I need Atlanta versus Tampa Bay, both teams sitting at 9-7, week 18. Yeah, week 18 because of the bye week. I need both of them playing for the number 3 seed, because I need that for my entertainment, for my television, because they know they're going to win that game and get a home playoff game. That's why all week 18 matchups are division opponents. But if it's something like, oh, if I'm getting a home playoff game no matter what, I'm gonna rest Sam Darnold and I'll take the 14-3 and not have to worry about it. But because I want to win this division to get a home playoff game, I gotta play it out. So it's just like, as far as the NFL, like, you're still selling the product and you're selling competitiveness.
Who cares about aggressiveness? I'm trying to win.
You got guys still out there. You got guys when they could be 3-13, all trying out for another team. So
Hey,
that running
Brandon
back
Staley was
kicker,
out there. He didn't give a fuck.
yeah. So he was like, listen, I got to take this handoff and I got to get 80, 90 yards this week. Or if I get over 800 yards, I get a bonus. Like, there's always going to be guys playing aggressive. It's the NFL. Those guys that don't want to play will stand on the sideline, because you can't half-ass it in a football game.
It is still up for the defense to stop you. That's their job, is to stop you from getting that
Getting
field
in
goal.
the field goal range.
You know what I'm
Like, if
saying?
you stop them from getting to the 40 is a 57-yard
What
field
you
goal.
sound like, Lethal? You sound like a dude that Drew Lock had his career high against your team. That's what you sound like.
You
You
just
know what
gotta
I'm saying?
win.
Yeah, and I mean that's the name of the game. Whatever the rules are, win. Just like baseball, right? If we're watching baseball, are you like, oh, he bunted? Oh, what a punk! Like you know what I'm saying?
Listen,
Like, no,
I
it's
got to get that
strategy.
guy from second to third, and that's what we're gonna do.
You know what I'm saying?
I
Like,
got to get that guy
so
from third to home because we have no outs. We're down one. I got to tie this game up. This is what I got to do.
yeah, so I think that it is what it is. It's not gonna change or whatever, but you know what I
Yeah.
mean. Like it just is what it is. But I know Green
The
Bay is trying.
problem is like it only comes up when it's an anomaly. Like there's not that many instances of it to the point where it's like it has adversely affected the game. The only thing the only thing that I recall personally is when Atlanta won 11 games and they had to go to Arizona for their playoff game because Arizona won the NFC West. But they still could have beat Arizona. It's indoors on turf. Maybe while you have Larry Fitzgerald double covered, somebody looks for the ball. And maybe he doesn't have the most spectacular catch I've ever seen him make in his entire career. But that's the way it is. New Orleans had a great run that year. They had more wins than Atlanta, and Atlanta had to go to Arizona to play their game. It happens. It doesn't happen every year where all these division winners win barely enough, and then everybody they play has a better record than
Right.
them.
And
If
then
that
real
was the
quick,
case, then I would understand like some kind of editing or rethinking the rule.
and then real quick, say we'll wrap up with this since we're talking about rules and stuff. Let's look at what's going on in the NFL today. So these are the new rules that are being proposed for the upcoming NFL season and who they are being brought to the table by.
All right, I got the Detroit one. I'm all for it.
Yeah, so Detroit
I
wants
love
to
that. I've
eliminate
been saying that
automatic
for
first
years.
downs for defensive holding and illegal contact.
I don't think they'll go for it because it's gonna be tough. Because if you might get beat, you can just push a guy on 3rd and 10, and now it's just 3rd and 5. You could do that, but I don't like the holding and illegal contact. If the ball doesn't even go in that direction, I don't like it. Like if you got a guy running around on the backside of the play and maybe he gets bumped or grabbed and the play was a quick out to the right side, you got a guy on the left getting grabbed. I don't like that.
Yep,
But
and then of course Green Bay is trying to get rid of the tush push. Philadelphia, is trying to do what we were just talking about and make overtime and regular season overtime the same. So
15
basically,
minutes.
yeah, 15. They want 15 minutes in the regular season. It doesn't say what it wants in the playoffs as far as time, but basically both teams are allowed to touch the ball regardless of what happens on the first possession. So the
Was it
touchdown,
10? Is it 15 in the playoffs?
I want to say it's still 10, but I gotta look at so of course we just talked about the Detroit thing where they want the wild card teams to be seated higher if they have a better record. And then the last thing looks like Detroit again. Detroit's got a lot on their mind. Said they want to exclude the 90 player limit
Because they had
for
a bunch of injured
if
players
they
and they
had a bunch
couldn't
of
beat the
injuries.
Commanders.
Yeah. So,
Right
but
now,
yeah.
I'm against all those rules because it's all bitch ass rules. So I'm against every single one of them now, just because it's like all these things that
Bitch.
didn't go our way, we want to change the rule. No, all right. So if I'm the commissioner or the players committee or the owners group, I'm vetoing all those rules just because they're bitch ass rules. The tush push, stop it, because Kansas City stopped Buffalo's tush push. Only team that runs it well successfully is Philly. I personally don't like the tush push. I think you should just give the
No, I
ball to
don't like
running
it
back.
either. But I mean, if it works, it works.
Yeah. I mean, if you want to eliminate, hey, you can't push a player from behind because the Bush push with Matt Leinart, I think that was illegal in college
It was
football
illegal,
when
but they
he
didn't
did it.
call it.
They didn't call it. So if you want to get rid of
which would have been one of the biggest upsets ever.
the push part of it, because you could just put Jalen Hurts in shotgun and put the tight end and the running back right behind the guard, between the
Well,
guard and the center anyway,
I don't
and
know
he
what
can just run forward anyway.
I don't know what's the difference between the tush push and
a quarterback sneak.
when a guy has like a 3-yard gain and his lineman comes up and pushes him another 7 yards. Like, I don't know what the difference is.
The difference is the whistle might blow to stop that play. The tush push, the whistle doesn't blow, and Philly converts, and Philly won the Super Bowl, and Philly has an obnoxious coach who probably goes to these meetings and acts like an obnoxious asshole to all the other coaches. And they're like, you know what? We're going to fix that shit, buddy.
Well, Kansas City tried some different things in the Super Bowl to stop it. They just couldn't. You know what I mean? I know I don't necessarily like the launch rule with the field goals where you can't
leverage yourself on your own player.
Because that would be one of the retorts of, if like I said, I don't like the tush push, but I don't care per se about getting rid of it. So it's like, why can we do that, but we can't do that?
Yeah. And they try to say it's a safety thing, but if it's like, if my guy, like, I think you should be able to leverage yourself off your own player, not the opposing player.
Right.
You should be able to, but they'll probably get creative and do to just run and do like the cheerleader toss with like the dude to step in his hand, he throw him in the air. So I understand like that, why you can't do that. I don't like I think you should be able to leverage yourself and jump. If you leverage yourself on both of your players and you clear the offensive players, you're good to go.
Yeah.
Long as you're not using, like the cheerleader boost. But if you can use both of your players, if you can time it properly and you can jump over it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? But yeah, I'm down with that, Lethal. I ain't got no beef with that. You know what I'm saying? Like, because I mean, just in a simplistic way of looking at it, if Team X can do something, Team Y should be able to do something to resist it.
Yeah, just looking at it, can't push your defensive lineman.
You know,
it's just not gonna be effective.
Yeah, because I mean, you got to get low first of all. You know what I mean? But then, you know what I mean? But what happens when they start throwing? What happens when they start throwing out of this push?
You're just jammed up. It's
the
not a play. I don't even think the Eagles players like it. Yeah. I don't think Jalen really likes it. I know Jason Kelsey used to say he didn't like it that much.
Well, as a Saquon Barkley fantasy
at the end of the bottom of the pile.
Like it. You know what I'm saying? Even though I still won the fantasy title.
You won?
Yeah, I won. I still won. You know, shout out to Cowboy Mike, you know, for that tough game in the finals. You know what I'm saying? But on that note, you know what I'm saying, y'all, we will be back on Friday. You know, we got more March Madness to talk about, more around the association to do. You know what I'm saying? Make sure you're checking out the Pursuit of Forever every other Wednesday, 6:30 Eastern. You know what I'm saying? On Facebook, everywhere you get your podcast. Check out the One Mic podcast on Mondays and Thursdays at noon Eastern, high noon. Challenge you to a duel. Get your black on black gyms and all that. The Hot Box on Sunday, Monday, Thursday, and Fridays at 7 o'clock. You know what I'm saying? But he is the world-renowned, ass-kicking, name-taking, rejecting your feelings in fact fights, Mr. Logical. You know what I'm saying? Even though he need to take his ass on up to Newark to watch that Duke Arizona game for those of us that can't. You know what I'm saying? I am your unorthodox statistician. Like, review, subscribe, rate, do all the free things, do all the good things, and you know what? Sip on a liquid death. Love to all y'all out there. Thanks for joining us. Thanks for the engagement. Thanks for the fun times. Thanks for all the controversy and the argument. I love that shit.
Yeah.
We'll be back.
Good luck.
Mojo Entertainment. Lethal got that mojo. He got
solutions over excuses, baby.
You know what I'm saying? So solutions over excuses. Everybody. You know what I'm saying? Peace.